everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica and it is release day for our June pillows and stickers of the month. So for June, I wanted to do something fun and colorful and summery, and so I have got Dresdens and cherries and lots of fun colors for you. Let's go ahead and start off with our stickers. This month's stickers are so cute. So they start out with, of course, our vintage truck. I always do a different truck. This one is sort of a front-facing truck. It's got a cute gingham on it, and then of course it's got those adorable cherry blocks in the back. We also have a cute mug that says Cherry Pickin' Season with an adorable light little cherry print on it and blue gingham, which I love. Of course, I had to do a cherry sticker because so much fun. And if you recognize this, you're right. This is the cherry block from my Chairberry quilt. It has cherries and strawberries and it's so cute. The other one we have is our pin cushion. The pins on the top are little flowers and cherries. And then we also have our sewing machine block as well. This one's a little retro look to it with the light blue and pink. And then of course we added a Dresden sticker as well with all of the fun colors. So that is your 6 stickers for the month of June. Let's go ahead and check out the cross stitch. So for our cross stitch pillows, I have been trying to finish them off a little bit different each month, and I've been sharing those with you. I also have a video on how I created this, so I'll be running that here in just a second, but I did want to share it. I made this cute cherry block and then I turned it into a squishy round pin cushion, and look how cute that is. Now I do think I want to remake this because I would like to do one of those pin cushions where you put a pillow or a button in the middle and then tie it, you know, on both sides so it kind of pulls together like a little pillow. So I do still want to do that, but obviously I didn't want to do that for my cross stitch. So the cross stitch I just didn't want to ruin, so I'm not going to do that for this, but it is a cute little round pin cushion, and you can put pins up here or you can flip it over and put your pins in the back side. And I just wanted to do something different, so I went with a round pin cushion. This one finishes, and I think it's about 5 by 5, and then it's a couple inches high, 1.5 inches high, I think. So let's go ahead. I'm going to roll the video on how to finish this just to give you another idea. You can finish it however you want. Instructions for this finishing are in the pattern, as is just our basic, just turn it into a basic plain square. And you also get instructions on how to do them in a whole cloth. So if you don't want to do the little pillows, you can just do the whole cloth and then add each month as they release. But let's go ahead and run that video on how to finish off our June pin cushion. So the June pillow comes with a template on how to make this cute round pin cushion, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. So you're going to want to make sure you print off your pin cushion template, and then also on the template there's a 1 by 1 inch square, and you're going to want to make sure you print this at 100% scale, and your 1 by 1 inch square should match exactly on your ruler or your cutting board. So just make sure that's the right size, and then you should be good to go. These black lines indicate where you're going to cut your fabric. The red lines indicate where you're going to cut your fusible fleece. So just follow the instructions on here. It's pretty clear on where to cut what. So you are going to need a side panel and a side panel matching fusible fleece. You're going to need a backing circle with a backing circle matching fusible fleece, and then you're going to also put together your front panel as well. And then this fusible fleece is going to be for your front panel, but we'll do that in just a minute. So in order to make our front panel the right size for our circle, we're going to grab a couple of different fabrics, and you can actually make this scrappy if you want. I chose the same fabric for all of my pieces. First, you're going to cut down your stitch piece. That is specified in the pattern as well. You're going to add your 2 side panels using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then you'll come back and add your top and bottom panels again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to take one of my pieces, place it right side down onto my stitched piece, and I'm just going to sew right along this edge using 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'll come back and add this piece and then our tops and bottoms. And when I'm sewing onto my machine, I actually like to put the fabric down towards my feed dogs, and I leave my stitched piece up, and I actually just try and sew following one of the rows on my cross stitch piece, and that just makes the seam a little bit straighter, appear a little bit straighter when you're adding fabric to a cross stitch piece. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Again, I'm going to place it onto my machine with the fabric side down so I can follow one of the lines on my stitched piece. All right, and we've got our 2 side pieces added. I am going to press that. Now I cut my pieces a little bit shorter, but I'm just centering them, and we're going to have plenty of fabric. So just center your fabric on the center of your cross stitch piece, and again we're just going to sew our top and bottom using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And here is our piece. Now I'm just going to press it with my iron, and I try not to press directly on my stitching, but I don't worry about it too much. I am using my Laura Star steam iron, and then here's our finished stitched piece. Now what we need to do is cut out and trace our template. And so now we just need to center this on here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fold my piece in half, and I'm just putting a little press in the fabric like that, and then I'm going to fold it in half this way. And again, I'm just going to press my fabric a little bit. And then now we've got some lines we can follow, and I marked the center lines on our template. So all we have to do is put that template right on those lines, line up the lines as best as you can. I like to trace around it first just to make sure that it looks good and looks like it's nice and centered. It is, and now I can take my scissors and cut out that circle. And as you can see, like I said, we have plenty of fabric here. Oh, wrong scissors. And this does include your seam allowance and everything, so you're going to just want to cut directly on the lines. All right, and now we have that done. I've also already cut out my backing circle using my template as well. So now that our circles are done, we're going to go ahead and put those wrong side up, and we're going to take our fusible. The bumpy side is the fused side, the smooth side is not fusible, and I'm just going to center that on there, and as you'll notice, it's a little bit smaller than the circle. And you're going to want to follow the instructions on your fusible, but mine just has you press it for about 10 seconds. And with my Laura Star, I find that it's actually quite a bit less. And so that's fused and ready to go. And we can set those aside. The next thing we're going to work on is our side panel. And we're just going to cut that side panel on the fold. I've already cut mine, so using the template, you just place this fold right on the fold of the fabric and then cut out your template so that when you unfold it, you have a piece that's twice as long. And then I did the same thing with my fusible. And again, your fusible should be about 1/4 of an inch smaller. We're just going to center that. So this Laura Star is so fast for fusible. I love it. It's just immediately fused. If you have a regular iron, you might find that you need to hold it down for a little bit longer, and I just don't use steam at all. I actually just press, 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 but you'll want to follow whatever instructions came with your fusible fleece. I'll link the one I'm using in the description below the video. And now we're going to flip this right sides together, and we're just going to sew these short edges together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now we have basically a circle shape, and what I'm going to do is just lay it nice and flat, and I'm just going to mark my centers. I like to mark them with a pin. You could also mark them, with a marking pin or something like that, but I like to just do it this way. I'll use these pins in just a minute anyways. So we've got that marked, and then now we can fold it the opposite direction. So you can see I have that seam lined up with my center pins, and then I'll mark the others. And you're going to want to do this whenever you're doing something that is round in nature, because if you can mark these center pieces, and then when you pin it together, you'll see it will help you more evenly distribute the fabric around your circle, so you won't end up with puckering at the end. And circles can tend to shift a little bit, so this is just a great way to keep everything in place. Just like that. So now I have my centers marked. Now I'm going to start with my top piece. We're going to do our bottom piece last because we're going to leave the opening in that bottom piece to turn our piece right side out, and it's just easier to do it on a piece that doesn't have seams like this one. And then the other thing you might want to do, and I do apologize, it mentions this in the pattern, but I forgot to say it on video. When you're cutting out this side panel, it's better to cut your fabric on the bias instead of with the grain. That'll help your fabric stretch around the panel. And I actually forgot to do that. So I'm going to show you a little tip on how to fix that if you forgot. And so I would recommend when you cut this piece to actually cut it on the diagonal like this, so you'll be laying your template like this on the fabric. I forgot to do that, so I am going to show you a little tip and trick on how to do that as well, because I think that's also handy. So all I'm going to do is take my scissors, and I'm actually just going to cut little snips all along this. I'm not cutting all the way through my batting. I'm just cutting along this edge 1/8 of an inch or so in, not quite 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to do that on both sides. And what that's going to do when we go around these corners, it's going to allow our fabric to just give it a little bit of a give so it can get around those corners. And that is also another perfectly acceptable way to do this. Okay, so now I've got my little snips in there, and now we can start adding. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our cross stitch piece right side up, and I'm just going to take one of my center marks. It doesn't matter. We've already got the folds in our fabric from before, and if you can't see them, I can see them right here in person, but you might not be able to see them on camera, but you can mark those with a pin as well, just like that, so you know where those are. But just so you get the visual, you can mark your centers like that, and then what you're going to be doing is lining up all of those pins all the way around. So you just start with one. So here is one of my centers, and I'm going to take out one of those pins, I'm going to use the other one, and we're just going to pin both of those layers together. Just like that. And then I'll usually come up here to the opposite side. Again, line those up. We'll use one of the pins, and then I'll get the other one out of the way. I'm going to now do the horizontal pieces. Just like that. And then once you have all 4 of them pinned in place like that, then I'm going to go through and I just lay my fabric down a little bit and just ease it around there. And for this project, I think the more pins you use, the better. A little bit is helpful. You don't have to pin if you don't like to, but I like to do that for any time I'm doing circles. So what I'm doing, you can see there, is those little clips helped ease my fabric right around that edge. And I'm going to do that all the way around. And we're lining up our raw edges together and just distributing the fabric around that curved edge. And I really only put about 2 or so pins, I would say, one at the centers and then a couple in between. All right, so this is what my piece looks like. I am going to leave these pins on this side because we're going to be having to add the backing there, but this is what it's going to look like on the other side. And as you can see, I've just got little pins all the way around to help me. So now I'm going to sew all the way around this edge using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can use your batting as a little bit of a guide because this should be 1/4 inch in from your edge. And just do your best to make a nice, smooth, round seam all the way around. All right, so here is our first bit, and as you can see, it just went right around that circle really nice. Now I do have a couple places where it's not exactly perfect, and that's okay. When I flip it right side out, I can just check those edges and see if I want to fix anything, and now would be the time to do that before you obviously add the other side and stuff it. But that looks pretty good. I, at this point, will usually finger press this. You can also use an iron and just press those edges down just a little bit, but it should fall into place nicely because we've got our batting in there and everything should fit pretty well. All right, and now we're going to flip this back, wrong side out, and we're going to add our backing piece the exact same way, but this time we're going to leave a little opening in one of the sides so we can turn it right side out. And so I'll usually leave 1.5 to 2 inches opening, and just make sure you backstitch at your stops and starts so that you can do that. Okay, so we should still have all of our centers marked. For this one, you're going to just do the same thing. Again, fold it in half, mark that center. You can also use the template as well. It has markings on it as well, but honestly I find it just as easy to fold your circle in half. And you'll just use those pins as a guide. So line those pins up. Again, make yourself a little crease and add some pins, and then that way you know you've got your centers marked. And we're just going to place that like that, and then same deal. This is a little bit more finicky obviously because you have a piece already on there, but I'm just going to start off by picking one of my seams, lining it up with the center here and pinning that in place. I'll grab my next side seam, pin, pin, and pin. And then again, I'll probably stick a couple more pins around here. I'm going to sew all the way around, again, leaving a little bit of an opening. And just, I think it's a little bit easier. Don't leave the opening by this seam either. If you leave it somewhere over here in the middle, you have a lot less chance of stretching or tearing anything. So I'll probably leave my opening somewhere over here. All right, here's what our pincushion is looking like. And then all we need to do is just carefully turn it through our opening. And then you can also give this a little finger press if you want. You'll also want to just be careful with that opening. That's why I always say to back stitch at your stops and starts. That'll keep that opening from tearing too much. And then you can also, use one of these little hair markers, and I like to just run it right around that edge. It just helps get that seam nice and flat. You could also try and hit this with just the tip of an iron. It's kind of a pain, so honestly I like working this with my fingers a little bit better, and I'll just sit here and go around the edges and just press that fabric like that. Okay, and then I am going to press our opening in using my fingers, just 1/4 inch as well. So here's what the top looks like, here's what the back and sides look like, and then our last step is just to fill this with our stuffing. You can also use walnut shells, rice, whatever you want to use, and then hand stitch that opening closed. If you need help hand stitching the opening closed, make sure to check out my January video. I show how to do that in great detail here, but I'm not gonna re-show that step in today's video because I feel like we've done enough of these pin cushions at this point. I think you get the idea. You can finish this however you want as well. The basic finishing instructions like the January pillow are included in this pattern as well, but I am trying to do something fun and different for all of these little pin cushions. So that's how I finished my June pin cushion. All right, so that is it. Super easy. Sewing around curves I know can be a little bit intimidating, but as long as you go slow and just work your way around, it really is very easy. But that's it for our June pin cushion. I think it turned out really cute, and I love the little cherries. Now for our quilty pillow, I did do something different because I mentioned I already have my chairberry quilt, and I was gonna do another cherry pillow, and I might still just for fun, but I didn't wanna just re-release that same block, and I couldn't quite figure out a way to make it look different. So I went ahead and did the Dresden plate block because I haven't done one of those yet this season. So here is our Dresden plate for June, and I used lots of fun colors, and the fabric that I used on this is my new fabric line called Bloom. I love it so much. It's got all kinds of fun colors in it. It's super bright and cheery and just so much fun. So that's what I used for the front. All right, and I just went ahead and took my pillow out because sometimes I think you can see it a little bit better without the pillow in it, but here's the full Dresden, and I did a little low volume print there in the center, and it's just so much fun. Now, one thing that I've been saying I was gonna add to these pillows where I didn't add binding, which on this month I didn't, is a label. So I went ahead and added one of my little small labels. I'm sorry, it's upside down. These are from Ever Emblem, and I just got them off her website, and they are actually iron-on, but you can also fold them in half and add them to small projects like pillows and mini wall hangings and things like that. So I love adding these to my smaller projects, so I went ahead and added that. And then for the backing, I actually used 4 different prints, low volume prints, and I sewed together a 4-patch, basically a giant 4-patch, and then I sewed the Dresden onto that. And part of the reason I did that was because I didn't have enough of this one background print that I originally wanted to use. And I thought, well, let's just make it a 4-patch, make it scrappy. It already is because it's a Dresden. And I think it turned out really cute having it on that 4-patch background. And it's really easy as well. So this Dresden has 10 super chunky blades on it, and I do have a template included in the pattern and of course all instructions, but I did also film it, so I'm going to roll the video now showing you how I put together this Dresden plate and specifically how to do the blades and just make sure everything lines up, because that's the real trick with these Dresdens. They have to all line up well, and my first tip is just your 1/4 inch seam. You're going to want to make sure you're doing a 1/4 inch seam and that you're sewing everything nice and straight, and then you should have no problem putting those Dresdens together in this fun design. So let's go ahead and roll that video, and I'll show you how to make this cute Dresden flower. So I have done a Dresden plate tutorial for a bag unit. It was a few years ago, and it was a little bit different than this one, so I wanted to show you again and do a little refresher course. And I love making these scrappy. You can make each blade a different color. You could alternate colors. There's all kinds of ways to make this. So just dig into your stash bin, see what you have, and come up with something unique. So you're gonna just take your trimmed Dresden blade unit, you're going to fold it in half just like this, right sides together, and then we're just going to stitch right across this top edge using a 1/4 inch seam. And I've already done it on this one, but the next thing I always do is just clip off this corner right here. This is the folded corner, and just clip near your stitch line, but not through it. That's gonna reduce some of that bulk when we flip it into this point. And then the next thing you're gonna do is just take your Dresden blade. I just use my finger to poke out that point just like that. And then I do like to use a point turner as well. And this one is just by Clover. And then I'll usually lay this, sometimes I'll do it on a ruler, but you can still see that center crease from when I folded it in half. I just try and make sure that my seam continues lining up with that center crease just like that. And let's get those out of the way. And I just press it. I'm not even 100% touching down. I'm just, you know, gently pressing, and it presses so fast. So that's it. So that's how easy it is to make these Dresden plates. And all you need to do really is just make sure that center seam is lined up with the center of your blade, and you'll be good to go. And then all you need to do is make 10 more of them. And I like to put them together in units. So I will put together, let's separate out these blues. I'll put together usually units of 3. Since there's 10 blades in this one, I did 2 units that were 3 and then one that had 4 blades in it. I think it just helps things not to get too wonky. And here is what I mean by that. So I've just sewn 3 of them together. You can press them open, or you can press to one side. For these, I just press to one side. But the main thing that you're working on with these Dresdens is this point right here. You want all your blades to measure up here. It doesn't actually matter what's happening down here, because in most cases you're going to be covering that with some sort of a center circle. So I don't ever worry about this down here. I always line up these points when I'm assembling my blade units. So for example, I've got these 2 blades right here. They may or may not be perfectly pressed, who knows, we'll find out. But what I'm going to do is just line up these 2 points right here when I'm sewing them. So you'll put them together, right sides together, and then these top corners, I just make sure that those line up. You're also going to make sure this side lines up. And then if these bottoms don't line up perfectly, don't worry about it. Just make sure this top edge lines up perfectly, and I always start sewing from here as well. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't normally pin these, but you absolutely can, especially if you're doing a lot of them and you just want to prep them so that you can get over to your sewing machine. But you can throw just a couple of pins in there to keep that straight, and then you're going to sew down this edge using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, and here we are, and then when we open these up, we should have that seam right there, almost perfect, if not completely perfect. And then just like regular, I just set that seam with a little bit of heat, press it back, and look how good that looks. And so you're just going to repeat that with the rest of your blades. Like I said, I put mine together in sets of 3, and then I had 1 set of 4 because I have 10 blades. And then now I can sew those units together. I just like doing that a little bit better. It seems like it keeps the pieces from getting too wonky if you're going in a complete circle. So now I'm just going to take one of these units, I will place them right sides together. Again, I'm going to line up this point where the tops meet, not the point where the bottoms meet. I'm not going to worry about that. Just keep this side straight, and then we'll add this unit. All right, and then we just need to add this unit in as well. Same way, I'm going to do one side, and then I'll come back, press it, and then do this last side. And I do like to press as I go. And then we just have our last one. And I do like to give it one final press just to make sure everything is set. And as you can see, we've got all of our points lining up nicely, so this Dresden is ready to go. Now the other thing I'd like to point out with Dresden plates is that when you are trimming these, obviously these blades are on the bias right here. So for example, if we pull it along the grain, you can see right here I'm pulling, but there's not really much to pull. It's not distorting at all. But when you cut it on the diagonal like this, it's called the bias. And as you can see, just by pulling on this, it's really easy to stretch that material. So one thing I do recommend for working with these is either pre-starching your fabric, or you can also use some Mary Ellen's Best Press or other sizing spray that you prefer. And this will really help keep these blades from distorting while you're sewing them together. And in the end, you'll have a much nicer, flatter Dresden. I also mentioned that I like to press as I go, and I think that also helps keep everything nice and straight as well. The other thing I recommend is that you are getting a pretty decent 1/4 inch seam when you're sewing all of these blades together. And then, like I said, you can press these open if you prefer, or you can just press them to one side. I'm gonna go ahead and just leave them pressed to one side like that. So our Dresden plate is ready to go. And then now we have our center circle, and you can actually make your circle any size that you want. I went ahead and did a nice big chunky circle in the center because I thought it looked really cute and it makes it look more like a flower than a Dresden plate, your typical Dresden plate. So I've cut my fabric per the template in my pattern, and then I grabbed just some plain white fabric from my scrap bin, and I'm going to be using this for the backing. So I'm going to place that right sides down on that fabric. I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and sew 1/4 inch all the way around, and then when I come back, I'm going to cut a little X in this backing fabric and we'll flip it right side out. And when you're sewing around this corner, just make sure to go nice and slow. Take your time. If you have to, you can lift up your presser foot and pivot a little bit and then put it back down. So don't be afraid, just go nice and slow. All right, as you can see there, hopefully, I just sewed around. Sorry, I know it's all really white, so I do apologize. But I did just sew right around the inside edge, about 1/4 inch all the way around. This doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Just trim away your excess fabric. You can also trace the template onto both pieces and cut it out. I just think, I don't bother doing that. I feel like it's just faster to trace it on one piece, and then also you don't have to worry about lining it up. Okay, now we're just going to take this and just pull these layers apart. So this white one is my backing layer, this print one is going to be the front, and I'm just going to clip a nice little, you can do an X, you can do just a line, but really all you need is a hole big enough to turn this right side out. And before I turn it really quickly, I am just going to set those seams just like I always do. And then we can just flip it right side out. You could also use interfacing on this if you wanted. I like using fabric because it's just a little bit softer. And then I can take my point turner / hair marker, and I can just come and run around that edge with that. And just get that edge pushed out nice and straight. And when I'm doing this, my goal is basically not to see that white backing fabric. Also, if you'll notice, I've got darker prints back here. If I were to just put this straight on top of there, you would be able to see those darker prints through here. So I prefer doing it this way. And we're just going to give that a nice press. Now the next thing I do is I want to make sure my circle is centered on my Dresden. And so what I'll usually do is, you've got this seam line right here to work with. So I'll go ahead and just press my piece in half. We can press that crease out later and just line that up with those. I'll also do it this way. And if I need to, I can press these Dresdens in half just so I have something to work with. This doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but it is just nice to have some reference points. And then I can place my circle on and just make sure I'm lining up those marks. And it won't matter so much if you don't have a directional print like I do. If you just have a overall print, it's not a big deal. And I'm going to pin this in place for now, but I'm not going to sew it yet. I actually prefer to sew my Dresden to my background fabric before I add this, before I sew this, just in case anything gets a little bit wonky during that process. But I do want it on there just so I know that it's relatively centered. The next thing we're going to do is take our pillow, and I actually dove into my scrap bin for this one and created a nice little 4 patch using some low volume background prints. And now I can center my Dresden on this, and it's really easy because I just need to put those points right on that seam, line up these seams. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, so just keep that in mind. If your seams are off a little bit, no one is going to notice. And then before I pin this down, I do like to just throw a little spray based on here. This is totally optional. I like this 505 spray based, and I'm just going to put just a little bit, just enough to hold it in place as I'm going. It just helps keeping things from shifting around too much. You could also just pin this, so if you don't have spray based or you don't like spray based, don't worry about it. And then I'll usually grab some pins, and I'm just going to place a pin here and there. You don't have to place them on every blade, but just enough to sort of hold this in place so it doesn't shift around on you, because what can happen as you're sewing along these edges is it can just push a little, push a little, push a little, and then pretty soon before you know it, you've got a little bit of a wrinkle there, and that's no fun. So I do like to just make sure I'm doing a good job keeping this in place before I start sewing. And so now we've got our Dresden all nice and pinned down, and then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and you can use either maybe a 1/4 of an inch seam or a 1/8 inch seam would be cute as well. So I'm probably going to start right here. I'll run up this side, leave my needle in the down position once I get to that top point, come back down this edge, again leave my needle in the down position, pivot my fabric, and then keep going all the way around. And then, like I said, you can either machine stitch or hand stitch your Dresden in place, and then you just need to follow the instructions for putting the pillow together from there. And if you missed that, check out my January video. In that video, I show you 2 different ways on how to put the pillows together. So head back and watch that video if you need help with the pillow portion. All right, and as you can see, it's really easy to sew the Dresdens together. You just need to keep everything relatively straight and just make sure you're pretty good on your 1/4 of an inch, and you should be good to go. If you purchase the pattern, you'll have the exact measurements you need for all of this, but look at how fun it is. And because I made this out of a lot of my strike-offs, I didn't have enough fabric for the back of this with a color that I wanted to do, so I actually had a red and white plaid. This is actually a weave, and it's super stretchy, so it was a little bit finicky to work with, and I don't even remember where I got this. I think it was at a quilt show or something, and I thought, oh, that'd be such a cute tablecloth, and I didn't quite buy enough for a tablecloth, and so it's been sitting in my stash, and I thought, you know what, that'd be fun for a backing of a pillow, because it's really soft. It almost has a flannel feel to it, but it's not flannel. I'm not sure exactly what this material is, but I just know that it's really stretchy and soft. So the tip on that, if you're going to put a different type of fabric on the back of your pillow like this or a quilt, is I pinned it really well all the way around when I sewed it, just so it wasn't shifting and pushing and all of that, and then that just kept everything nice and straight. And I just sewed it right sides together. It's the envelope backing that I've been doing on all of my pillows, and then I did not add binding to this one, although you definitely could, because the Dresdens, you still have plenty of space between the Dresden and the outside of your pillow to add a binding if you wanted. I just chose not to for this one. So that's it for our June release. I hope you guys are enjoying this. If you missed anything, if you need help putting your pillows together, go back and watch the January one. That was the kickoff video, and it has all the information on how to put the pillows together. I show you how to do this method where you don't have binding, and then I show you how to do the method where you do use binding. And each month I'm showing you how I put together my little cross stitch pillows in video format as well. So hopefully throughout this series you are learning something new, and especially with these little pin cushions, I'm having so much fun. So that's going to be it for today's video. Everything I mentioned will be linked below this video. You can also get it at my store at store.confessionsofahomeschooler.com, and if you just type in the word June pillow, everything should pull up for you, or the stickers are under the Notions tab on my left sidebar. And then I am releasing these individually right now, but once all the months are released, I will bundle them all up into a printable and PDF package, and they'll probably be at a slight discount, just so you know. So if you want to wait for them to be all released, you can get that bundle at the end of the year. But that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know in the comments below which one is your favorite, the pillow, the cross stitch, or the stickers. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You can also hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any upcoming fun. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video. And if you've been paying attention, I've released, have I? Did I release it last month? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take this out, because sometimes I think you can see the pillows better not in. Sorry, that's my iron refilling.